Hello, readers. So, last week we talked about how powerful readers choose books that are just right so they can really understand and learn from the book. Today I'm going to teach you another way that readers can learn, and it's mostly from just their reading. A lot of times in Writer's Workshop, we start with an idea, then we draft and we revise and we figure out more what we want to write. Did you know we can do the same thing in reading? In reading, we also revise, but we revise our thinking. From the minute you start reading, you predict what you might read about and how the book might go. Then, as you read, the words on the page let you know what you need to reshape or how you can change your thinking. That schema folder. So, readers, today, for us to be wowed during our reading, not only do you have to think about choosing books that are just right, that aren't too challenging, that you can read, but also that you enjoy to read. We also need to think about our own reading. We need to think about our predictions of what we see and we think the text is going to be about, and then change them as we go and adjust our thinking. Just like that schema folder analogy I used with you when we've done schema folder lessons in the past. Remember, our brain works like a file cabinet. And when your file cabinet has correct information in it, you learn and you hold that information in your file bank, and you can pull it out and you can tell it to others, and you're knowledgeable on that topic. Sometimes we get incorrect information into our file cabinet, and that causes us to have a misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the fact. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to us. And the way that you do that is to think about your own reading as you're reading. So before we get into the mini lesson video with my co-teacher, Mr. Mike, I'm going to set the expectations of really looking at what we're reading here and then possibly making some predictions and just getting you interested in one of our mentor texts. So today's mentor text is Beastly Tales. So look at that. I know that picture. That's Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. Very famous photograph. Packed with facts you need to read. So this book is going to be about facts. Well, I didn't realize these beasts were alive. I didn't think they were really alive. Oh, a note to a parent. Well, I'm going to read that. DK Readers is a compelling program for beginning readers designed in conjunction with leading literacy experts. That doesn't really give us any great information. Beastly Tales, Yeti, Bigfoot, and the Loch Ness Monster. Table of contents. So let's take a look here maybe. Wow. I know these two creatures. That's the Komodo dragon, and those are gorillas. But I never really saw anything like that before. The subtitle here says, or the caption says, the kraken of the old Norwegian tales is now believed to be a giant squid, which can grow twice as long as a bus. Oh, so it must be a giant squid. So let's look at this here. Believe it or not, all around the world, people tell stories about seeing mysterious monsters in remote places. The storytellers are often accused of making things up, but sometimes it's discoveries made that proves them just right. So the topic I'm predicting is mysterious monsters in remote places. What about these mysterious monsters? We have to start thinking about them. Well, it tells us that a lot of storytellers are accused of making things up, but sometimes discoveries are made that proves them right. So I think this book's going to be about discoveries of these mysterious monsters. Mountain gorillas were discovered by European explorers in 1902. Well, that wasn't too long ago. I didn't realize that they were really a young find. It wasn't back in ancient times that we knew about gorillas. The Komodo dragon is a meat-eating lizard that can grow bigger than a person, but no one knew about it until 1912. Well, I know from history, 1912 is when the Titanic sank. So you're telling me that we had boats like the Titanic, but we didn't know about the Komodo dragon yet? Wow, that's really cool. Few people believed the stories about a man-like ape in Africa, a dragon in Indonesia, or a huge sea monster with long tentacles. However, we now know that these creatures, as the mountain gorilla and Komodo dragon and the giant squid, could there be other large creatures still undiscovered in the world? So this page is the Loch Ness Monster. I wonder what kind of information we're going to learn in this. So remember, we're making predictions. We're thinking about our reading and checking back. So we're checking back to think of our predictions of were we accurate or were we learning something different? So after reading the first page for some background knowledge, I remember them telling us that a lot of times storytellers are accused of making things up and that sometimes things are discovered that proves them just right. So I think I'm going to predict that there's definitive evidence that they have found. That means without a doubt that the Loch Ness Monster exists. I mean, look at this photograph of these guys seeing this monster here. So I'm wondering, and then we saw at the beginning a photograph that there must be evidence that the Loch Ness Monster is truly living in Scotland. So let's think about what information we can learn here. The Loch Ness Monster. Dad, what's that in the loch? Shouted Jim Aton. It was a calm summer's evening in 1963. Jim was working on his father's farm on Loch Ness, a lake in Scotland, when he looked up to see a strange creature moving silently in the lake. It was huge! Jim had never seen anything like it before. Loch Ness is a long, narrow lake surrounded by mountains in part of Scotland where people live. And there's United Kingdom and there's Scotland in the north. Two men nearby heard Jim's shouts and rushed to join him and his father. The excited group wanted a closer look. They ran to the lake, climbed in the boat, and headed straight towards the creature. So far, I'm not sure if I'm being accurate in thinking that there's definitive proof or if they're telling us something differently. The creature's head looked a bit like a horse's head, only bigger. Its neck stretched nearly 6 feet or 2 meters, as tall as a full-grown man. Its snake-like body was as long as a bus. Could it be the legendary Loch Ness Monster that people had talked about for years? Suddenly, the creature rose out of the water, then dived. An enormous wave hit the small boat. It rocked and swirled around. Had the creature seen the men? Was it about to attack? So, we do know that, what I've learned from this that's factual is that this man named Jim Aton and his father and some men who lived in Scotland allegedly in 1963 saw the Loch Ness Monster. I don't really know though yet if we have any facts that says that they know that this actually exists or if this is just a story. A few seconds later and the creature's head reappeared. It was further away now. The monster seemed more frightened than ferocious. Then it was gone. The men searched and searched for it, but they never saw it again. It was 20 years before anyone heard the story about what had happened that day. Jim and his father didn't think many people would believe them. But the Atons and their friends are not the only people who've claimed to seeing this mysterious monster. This photograph taken by monster hunter Anthony Shells 14 years after Aton's sighting seems to show the monster just as the Atons described it. If you were to view the lake, it would be hard to imagine it has a depth of more than 700 feet, but that's deep enough to hide a 42-story building, so it's a very deep lake. Well, that's a photograph. That photograph must show proof that the Loch Ness Monster actually exists, right? I don't know. Could be fake. It's really hard to tell. It's an old photo. So I'm going to pause here and you're going to see in the video with Mike that this is where you're going to get to your opportunity to make a prediction. I'm going to show you what Mike is going to do and when you watch his video. He is going to look at this section and each section is supposed to tell you something. So what do you think they're going to tell you about in this section? So I'm seeing a lot of old photographs and this is Loch Legends. The haunts of the monster. I think this is going to be historical background information about the Loch Ness Monster. Maybe we're going to learn about where the Loch Ness Monster lives inside the loch, those different types of things. So when Mike reads this, I want you to ask yourself, what are you learning? And then when you go back, I want you to check to see if your predictions were accurate or if it's different. What would you learn from this page? So we definitely know we're going to learn something about maybe legends and the haunts of the monster. So we'll see if we learn something different or we can add on to our thinking.